they're missing 7 starters on offense. It's hard to evaluate the performance of Joe Judge or Dave Gettleman. And one thing that is
after 4 years, after 3.5 years.
But hold on a second. Blake Martinez was the quarterback of the defense. Now James Bradbury is playing poorly. Leonard Williams isn't the same guy. I think Azeez Ojulari will be really good long term. But my point is, like, how do you evaluate this team when they're missing 7 starters?
So, Mike, if you were John Mara, you would say, okay, this year is a wash, essentially, for Dave Gettleman, considering that we have so many players injured right now. Mike?
Well, I like, to me,
I'm just curious if you're owner of a team, like,
yeah.
and you're year 4 with Dave Gettleman. Obviously, the O-line is something that people have needed. You felt like they wanted to address. I like the talent, but it feels like the talent is underwhelming to where they should be. Right?
You pick high up in the draft every year, you're going to have some talent.
But Jay,
Mike, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Breathe. And I'm telling you this because you're sitting there with 2 guys that are Giant fans, and everything is going to be about Giants this, Giants that.
I disagree with it. You know, I am open. I'm objective, right? Like I know Max isn't.
That's
right. But I get this. There's a long road. Like, dynasties are not built overnight. It takes time. I get that. I just want to hear the reasoning and the rationale of why you would do that.
Then I'm loaded. I got something for you, too.
I'm just saying, like, don't you believe that Daniel Jones, the trajectory, like we talked last hour about Justin Fields, if he plays well, Matt Nagy is probably going to survive and maybe get an extension and move forward with Justin Fields. Why would the Giants be different from a standpoint of you're trying to develop?
You say you didn't know if Matt Nagy should get an extension yet. You say you're still waiting to see.
I wouldn't, but my gut is he does because I believe in Justin Fields. I always have. I think he's going to be a really good player, and I think the Bear ownership is going to be like, well, if Fields is getting better, why would we make a change? And I'm saying the calculus is somewhat similar with the Giants, which is we know John Mara's proclivities. He errs on the side of being conservative. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure whether you guys like it or not, when they go into the room and the calculus is going to be Daniel Jones is better, we should be better on defense. They didn't play as well, but is it enough to blow the whole thing up?
Here's my beef, and I'd like you to address this. Daniel Jones, I think, has a chance to be a high average quarterback. I'm supposed to wait 4 or 5 years for that and thank the GM? You got me a high average quarterback after half a decade? And then for how many years? Like, that's garbage. Anyone can do that. If you give them control of a franchise for 4 or 5 years and always picking high up in the draft, that means nothing. No credit for that. Zero. Anyone can do that. That's one.
Give him no credit, Max. Give him credit.
He got the job by saying, hog mollies. I got to fix the offensive line. I take a guy like Gabe Jackson. Isn't that his name? The guard in Seattle. Guys like that are available every year for like a 5th-round pick. How hard is this? We're in year 4.
Because Gabe Jackson may meet and fit the criteria of the Seattle Seahawks and not what the Giants want to do.
I want Mike Tannenbaum.
Every guard doesn't fit every system. Every tackle doesn't fit every system.
Yes, I get it. Apparently,
Mike, explain to that knucklehead while you're in the studio, please.
But apparently, no offensive linemen fit our system for a half a decade now.
No, Key's right. And it is hard to get offensive line. Here's a great example. I think Pittsburgh made a mistake. If they brought Roethlisberger back, they should have brought back Alejandro Villanueva, David DeCastro, and Marquise Pouncey. If those 3 guys are going to graduate, Ben, you're going with them and running off into the sunset. It's hard to do it. So, to me, the offensive line, Andrew Thomas is going to be a really good left tackle. It took some time. Last year, we're saying, Becton was the better player. Now Becton's hurt. Thomas is playing better. Like, these things, like, they take time to develop. I'm just saying that I like where Daniel Jones is.
Talk some sense in the Max, Mike, please.
I'm trying. I am trying.
Not possible.
Is next year the judgment year?
No, there's no judgment year, apparently.
It has to get to a certain point where you're like, all right, like, this is either going to be the year that we define whether he is the future of our franchise.
But how can you guys? They have 7 starters missing on offense. Like, how can you fairly evaluate that?
You can't. I had this conversation with them last week. It's impossible to evaluate a team with a bunch of broke-down players or the head coach or the general manager. You just can't do it.
This is what I would say. If you're bad for 10 years, you should have talent on your team. If it's just and then the healthiest teams usually are pretty good. Let's say the Giants were completely healthy. They're not Super Bowl contenders. So even if you took the health out of it, they've been bad for a decade. We're talking about Mike. We're talking about a GM now who's in year 4. with draft capital every year. And we're saying if not for all these injuries, they would be ascending to a decent team. What?
Hey,
like someone
Max,
deserves credit for that?
I want to add to this. I just want you to know, Mike, this is my life, okay? Like all this with Max and this whole energy. So even 2 days ago on a text thread, our team text thread, you know what was discussed? Team text thread. The 49ers are in year 5 with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. They've gone 31-38 and don't have a first-round pick in either 2022 or 2023. Lots of GMs and coaches have been fired for records like this. It's Michael David Smith, right? If we're talking about that with Kyle Shanahan,
Who's been in the Super Bowl?
we're talking about that with Kyle Shanahan. We're not talking about that with Dave Gettleman. I know, Key. I know, Key, but we do this every single. Go ahead, Key. Try to talk some sense into me.
We're talking about a record of a head coach, not a record of a general manager.
We're talking about John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan.
Who has first
John Lynch
round
and
picks
Kyle Shanahan.
and plenty of draft capital. Players have been decimated.
Okay.
They just lost the Williams kid, Rodarius Williams. They just lost him to an ACL that they drafted out of Oklahoma State.
All right, so Key, let me ask you this then. So in your confidence level, 100 being the most confident, 0 being zero confidence, where's your confidence level in Dave Gettleman if you were the owner of this team moving forward?
I would probably say well, okay, so I'm thinking like an owner. Then I'm gonna probably give it 100% because I gotta buy all in.
No,
I'm
not asking you to transition. I'm asking you to keep the same Keyshawn Johnson energy that you always do, and now you're the owner.
If I'm the owner, I gotta buy in at 100% because if I'm gonna bring him back, I'm not bringing him back hoping that my ship crashes.
That's why you'd be a good owner.
I'm hoping that we do well.
That's why you'd be a good owner, right
and
there.
And then I'm gonna evaluate him next year when everything is healthy, and then if it doesn't work out, he'll be working with you.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.